Alrighty, folks, let's try this again. One more try. Alright, so it has been one of those mornings. Let me tell you what. Let me know if you can hear me okay before I get too far into it again here. Come on, show me what I'm looking for. There we go. Captions are auto-generated. After Schrock. There we go. Alright, now we've got that. Okay, so I've got my phone set up so I can watch myself because the secondary computer in the studio is not working. So I can't see any of your comments. I can't react to anything because if I try to watch the video on the same computer I'm streaming the video from, it's incredibly intense on the processor, so it really tends to make the stream a little more hiccupy. Also, it can create weird grandfather time loop things where the fabric of space and time disintegrate, and there's audio everywhere, and things just don't work, and we don't like that. So the show today was a triumph over the triumph of the human spirit over nature. So let's see. Let me list the things that got in the way today. So I didn't sleep very much last night. It was one of those just weird nights where it was like 2 a.m. before I finally fell asleep, and then my son woke up at 3 having a night terror, and I went in there for an hour, and then came out of there and went back to bed again, and I'm out of bed by 6:40 to get showered and shaved and cleaned up and into the studio and ready to go, so I have a little bit of extra time, so just a little margin of error in case something goes wrong. And so alarm goes off. I'm like, oh boy, get out of bed. Just moving a little slower than I should be. And you might have noticed during the show today, just a little bit slower on the uptake than normal. I don't know. Maybe I can just feel it and maybe it didn't come through. But especially at the start of the program when literally everything in the studio didn't work, it was like weird, right? Because I don't know, when you have the headphones on, you can hear yourself, and it's like, okay, I'm talking, I can hear myself. Without the headphones on, it was like an After Schrock, but it was the regular radio show. And I'm used to being like relaxed and informal with you guys on the After Schrock, but on the air I have to be like official and radio guy, and so it was like I was having this cognitive dissonance where I'm like, I don't know what to say, and then of course I blanked on the phone number. Like I couldn't remember the phone number to call in, and because I normally have 2 screens, I normally have one screen has my show prep. I had no show prep the whole show. I was doing it all from memory. From what I read last night. So then Roger comes in, and Roger normally logs me into this computer. That's why I can't use the computers. I don't have a login because I'm not a radio station employee. I'm not a Clear Channel employee or iHeart employee, so I don't have a login to the computer. So Roger logs me in using his, but then they force changed his password, but he got it wrong too many times because he didn't realize that they had force changed his password, and so he got locked out of his own account. So he couldn't log in either. So and Roger didn't sleep good last night either, so he was a little frazzled. And then the system that normally, like when you listen to the radio show from our website at SchrockInnovations.com, or if you listen on, any of the other stations out there, like WHO or anything that we rebroadcast on, KFOR in Lincoln, we send an audio file to those stations after the show concludes. That audio file is a recording that Roger sets up and records during the show. Well, the computer running the audio recording wouldn't record for whatever reason, so that didn't work. And so there's an air check backup system basically that we can pull it from. It just takes a little time to get it. So we'll get the recording from that. But he was a little flustered about that. So then the show goes to start, and I plug in my headphones. I got everything all hooked up, and I put on my headphones, and I hear nothing. And I'm like, what the heck? And I'm like, trying different headphones. Maybe my batteries died in my headphones. Trying different things. Nothing's working. Finally, I use a different bank over here, and I get some headphones to work. But I was just like one thing after another, after another, after another. And then about, halfway through the program, I'm like, my laptop is running just like junk. Like, what is going on here? And then I look down and I realize I don't have it plugged into AC power. I've been running on battery the first half of the show. Oh, shoot. Because of everything else going on, I forgot to plug in the power cord. So get up, grab the power cord, come back, plug it all in. Like, okay, now at least I can run with normal power. So it has definitely been an experience this morning. And hopefully I was able to put together the semblance of a decent show for you so that basically you could you could enjoy it. But it was a little dicey there, especially at the beginning. I want to apologize for that. All right, so there's a ton of stuff going on in the world right now, guys. Like just a ton of stuff. Some of it's tech related, some of it's not. So we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. So post a comment and lead this in the direction we want to go. I've never really watched from my phone before, so I see one comment that says "There we go." And that's all I see so far. There we go. Here comes a bunch of comments all of a sudden. Thor is back. Good morning, Thor. Video is a little better. Good morning. Good morning. Can you explain the Ethereum merge? The Yahoo Finance keeps showing stories about it. I knew you were going to ask me about this, Ronald, so I actually read a story on this last night because it's complicated. So, long story short, there is an update coming to the Ethereum is a cryptocurrency. It's a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, but one of the things about Ethereum, and you can do this on Bitcoin now too, but Ethereum kind of has first mover status, so everybody still uses that. You have the ability to deploy what's called a smart contract. In other words, an if-then statement. If this happens, then do that. And you can do that, and you use your Ethereum to power the contract to make the stuff happen. And so it can actually be used really effectively for distributed finance. If this goes over a certain percentage, then pay this percentage interest. If this gets transferred here, then transfer that there. Maintain a balance if then. There's lots of things that you can do with these smart contracts, just even outside of finance, of distributed finance. Well, the problem is they're tough to program. Like you have to have some decent base knowledge, and it takes time to deploy them. Well, the new updates to the Ethereum blockchain are going to eliminate both of those things. There's going to be a much faster time for development, as well as a lower knowledge threshold required to develop. Primarily through it's basically a framework that automates a lot of the coding. So between those two things together, we should see more innovation on the Ethereum blockchain, which is causing the price of Ethereum to skyrocket a little bit. It's up 30% in the last week. So if you have some Ethereum set aside, not a bad time to take a little profit, 30% up. We've learned our lesson from highs, right, guys? It doesn't go up forever. Might not be a bad time to take a little profit, and then unless you're just a holder, you're going to hold, like me, because I don't trade, I just hold. But nevertheless, that's what's going on with Ethereum. That's what the big stories are all about. That's why the price is jumping, and that's why Ethereum has gone up 30% in a week, where Bitcoin is up, but not up significantly. Excuse me. Red Bull and coffee can only take me so far. All right. So, what else is going on in crypto? What's going on with what's with the rally in the stock market? Right. Everything around us seems to be crumbling. Bad economic data everywhere. Yet the stock market is not crumbling, and cryptos are going up. Interest rates for mortgages have come down slightly. What's going on? Well, we're firmly in the bad news is good news territory. So the markets, right? So the markets are not the economy. That's the first thing. We have to separate the two. The stock market is not the economy. The housing market is not the economy. The economy is a conglomeration of all these things together. All these markets are looking 6 months into the future of what's going to happen 6 months from now, trying to make bets and predictions on where things are going to end up. But the economy is what we're living right now. The economy we're living in right now is recessionary. The White House is trying to redefine what a recession is right now, like to change the actual definition of recession, because we're in a recession and they don't want to be in a recession. But the job cuts are starting. We just noticed we posted a junior technician job for the Omaha Service Center. For how long, guys, have I been sitting here saying, we're hiring, apply now. Like, we really need good people. And we get like 2 or 3 applicants for the job, and half of them don't show up for the Zoom interview. It's ridiculous. We're averaging 2 applicants an hour for a junior technician job just now that we posted 2 days ago. So something is happening. Something is changing. It's not getting reported on, but something is changing. And I think that you're going to see that in some of these numbers coming out. So what everyone is betting, the markets say the reason that we're down isn't because the economy has gone to trash or whatever. It's because the Federal Reserve is raising rates and cutting stimulus. And if they just kept printing more money, everything would be fine in the markets. They would just keep going up. Now, so would the price of everything else. But the markets would keep going up, right? So everything that the market's looking at right now is based on when is the Fed going to have to stop raising interest rates, because the pain that they're inflicting on the economy is so intense that if they raise rates more, they're going to cause a depression. When is the Fed going to, they're calling it capitulation. When is the Fed going to capitulate and pivot and go back to printing money and lowering interest rates down close to zero again? Because when that happens, the risk assets will take off again, and the markets will come roaring back. So if you can properly predict when that's going to happen, you can make a lot of money. Historically, it has happened every single time. As much as we would like to say, gosh, I hope that doesn't happen, in modern history, and in the last 25 years, every single time the Fed has raised rates or tightened, they've been doing it right into the teeth of a recession, and then the recession comes, and then they're like, ruh-roh, and then they just loosen everything up again, and then the bubble gets even bigger than it was before. So if we believe history is a predictor of what's going to happen in the future, markets are saying around November the Fed's going to hit their limits and they're going to have to start loosening. And when that happens, the markets are going to go crazy. So the more bad news that we have right now, the more likely it is the Fed is going to capitulate. Right? So the worse the economy gets that we're all experiencing, the more pressure there will be on the Fed to loosen things up again and make life easier on everybody. Now the problem is we have this inflation monster also out here that is not getting smaller. It's actually continuing. This is what's frustrating, because you know the day is going to come when the news channels are going to report inflation is down, inflation is under control, inflation is back to 2% or 10% or 6%. It's down. Well, the problem is when inflation goes down, that doesn't mean the prices are coming down. That means their prices are going up at a slower rate. So what you should be rooting for right now, if you want to see things go back to normal, is you should be rooting for deflation, where prices go down. What causes deflation? A recession. So this is the conundrum the Fed is in. If they keep raising rates, they're going to destroy the housing market. They're going to cause all kinds of problems with the stock market, which they claim not to care about, but they're going to cause people to lose their jobs, because in recessions, companies cut positions. They tighten their belts. So when all this happens, it's going to cause unemployment to go up. It's going to cause, in theory, inflation to come down, but it's also going to depress economic growth. It's going to slow down the economic growth. Now, macroeconomically, you can't continue on with inflation the way it is. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse until it becomes an insurmountable monster and you end up with hyperinflation. So you've got to tackle it at some point. And it's going to be painful to tackle, and the longer you wait to tackle it, the more painful it's going to be. So now the question is the Fed going to pull a Volcker and tackle it, regardless of the pain of the economy? Or are they going to capitulate? And the market is betting they're going to capitulate. And historically, they have always capitulated. Because, we talk about Volcker and the Reagan in the 80s crushing inflation, because that's the last time it happened. We've been in an incredibly deflationary period since then. All right, let me make sure I'm not seeing any. Yep, no new comments. According to my feed, there's no new comments, although they tend to appear like 50 at a time. So anyway, I'll keep an eye. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I think you've heard the story about Nancy Pelosi wanting to visit Taiwan. So this gets leaked that she wants to go to Taiwan. China says there will be a response if she goes to Taiwan. The Defense Department's like, please, Nancy, don't go. China's going to be so angry. So now, whether you like Nancy Pelosi or not, the United States government is in a position where either A, the Speaker of the House of Representatives goes to Taiwan against the will of China, evoking a promised response from China, whatever that might be, or B, China gets to dictate the schedule and the travel plans for the Speaker of the House of Representatives of the United States government, the number 3 in line for presidency. It's a lose-lose. If she cancels her plans to go to Taiwan, China's dictating our foreign policy. If she goes to Taiwan anyway, she's causing an international incident. Now, normally, China always blusters whenever anyone goes to Taiwan. It's not a big deal. Blah 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 blah. There'll be a response. This time, it's a little more insistent. It's like a little stronger, it seems. But if you look at the backdrop of what's happening in China, it can put some color in the picture. So I don't know if you've heard about this, but millions and millions of people in China are refusing to pay their mortgages right now. So the way that the property development bubble works in China is when you want to have an apartment built or a house or something like a residence built, you go out and you borrow the money basically to build it, and you pay the builder like a mortgage payment. So you're paying every month toward your apartment or your house or whatever, your residence, and the mortgage or the builder takes that money that's coming in every month and uses that money to purchase the building materials to actually build the residence that you're paying for. The challenge is the cost of building materials has gone up so significantly that the money coming in from the mortgage payments is not sufficient to purchase and to build the residences that people are paying for. So it's causing delays, right? So they're still building. They're just not building as fast because it takes more money to build one residence. So they're basically slow rolling a lot of people who continue to pay every month for a residence that is now a year, 2 years behind schedule that they're not getting. And they're finally fed up. They're like, you know what? I'm not going to pay this anymore. You give me what I've paid for, or I'm not going to pay you any more money. And so it started in one province and it's spread now. There are millions of people not paying mortgages right now for property that hasn't been built yet in China. So what is this doing? This is causing the builders to have a cash flow crisis because they have purchased materials on 30-day terms from suppliers. Well, now their income stream is gone. They have no money to pay their suppliers. Their suppliers will not provide them with any more building materials. Because they have no more building materials, they've got to stop construction, which causes more people to stop paying their mortgages, which causes, it's a doom loop, right? So that's bad, right? This has the potential to crash the entire Chinese economy because, in America, our number one asset is the stock market, the 401ks, everything that everybody's in. Everyone's in the stock market, right? In China, it's housing. Everybody's in housing, not just their own house. They have investment properties, 1, 2, 3, 4 houses or 4 apartments that they've purchased simply to hold on to. They're not going to. No one's ever going to live in them. They're going to buy them to sit on them to sell them 5 or 10 years from now at a profit because they believe the value of them will go up. Literally, it's like the number one investment in China, and it is in severe trouble. Meanwhile, President Xi would like to be elected, president for life, so he wants another term. And there's a Congress, a CCP Congress coming up where he will be elected, or someone will be elected. So now we have mass unrest in Chinese cities. It's getting worse because it's causing bank runs. So what's ending up happening is that the builders have borrowed money from the banks, and the people paying mortgages have borrowed from the banks. So the banks aren't getting paid by either side. So the banks are saying you can't withdraw your deposits anymore because we need the money to cover other things. And so people who are lining up outside the banks demanding their money back because it's my money, it's my savings, and you should give it back to me. I want to withdraw, and they're like, no, there's no money to withdraw. It's a classic bank run. And it's happening in a lot of the rural banks. So these are smaller areas, smaller communities, harder to control. They're not big cities, and they're much more widespread. So it's almost like a populist revolution in a way. So China's got some significant internal turmoil in need of a distraction, of a nationalist distraction, a big distraction. So all of a sudden, put the two stories together, which is what I like to do. And Nancy Pelosi wants to go to Taiwan. If Nancy Pelosi goes to Taiwan, the reaction from China might actually be more outsized than normal because China needs something more outsized than normal. For example, maybe an American warship doing a freedom of navigation thing through the Strait of Taiwan gets detained by Chinese warships. Not interdicted, but stopped. Maybe some citizens get taken hostage that are traveling to China, business people. there's lots of different things that could happen, short of a full invasion of Taiwan, obviously. Um, but yeah, it's a pretty significant possibility that something could happen with this. So then at the same time all this is going on, Turkey strikes a deal between Russia and the Ukraine to sail grain out of the port of Odessa, which is badly needed by a good chunk of the world, right? The day it's signed, somebody long-range rocket bombs the port of Odessa, attacks it. Obviously, everyone points their fingers at Russia. Russia's like, well, is it us? And, of course, no one in the Western media is going to even consider the possibility that somebody else could have bombed that port for various reasons. But sit back and ask yourself, who does it benefit for a food crisis caused by a Russian invasion? All these people ticked off, hungry, who are they going to be mad at? Russia or Ukraine? Maybe we don't want that grain to get out of the port. I'm just saying. Crazier things have happened. We did try to blow up. When I say we, I mean some element of the United States government tried to blow up a dam in Turkey, or not in Turkey, excuse me, in Syria, to shield the retreat of ISIS troops from Turkish forces. Unfortunately, blowing up the dam would have also killed 30,000 citizens in Syria, but, ISIS needed to get away. The reason that we know it was an American operation is one of the bunker buster bombs that was dropped into the dam didn't blow, and that's why the dam didn't go down. So we don't know what elements of there's so many elements of the government. Was it the CIA? Was it, who was it that dropped this bomb, or that was trying to do this, or trying to meddle in this? But, at this point, you can't put anything past anybody. So, I don't quickly point at anybody anymore and say, oh, look, Russia bombed that. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know. But all I'm saying is it's awful coincidental. And then if you've been following the story out of the Netherlands, farmers in the Netherlands under ESG restrictions, they have to reduce their nitrogen pollution and carbon pollution and everything else. And 30% of the farmers in the Netherlands aren't going to be able to farm if they impose these rules, which are being imposed. So they're basically striking. So now you've got farm production in the Netherlands down, which the Netherlands is a huge exporter of food to the rest of Europe. You've got some serious food problems happening. And then I saw a story of a U.S. senator. Now, I want to ask, if anybody out there is a farmer who's watching right now, please tell me how this makes sense. Because, I'm not in agribusiness, so I'm inch deep, mile wide, okay? So give me some depth on this. But this senator was saying farmers are not going to pull their crops out of the fields because the cost of diesel is too expensive. That it's going to cost them more to pull the crops out than to just leave them in the field. Now, to me on the surface, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because you would think some farmers might leave their stuff in the field, which would create a shortage, which would cause the price to go up, which would lead to other farmers harvesting, which if I'm a farmer, I'm going to harvest on the hope that someone else doesn't harvest and the price goes up, right? So I'm still going to pull my crops out, right? Right? So if you're a farmer, let me know, under what circumstance would you just not harvest your crops due to the cost of fuel? Like, how high would fuel have to go? Or are we actually there? Is this a real thing? I saw one story about it, and I searched around trying to find any talk to farmers not pulling their crops out. I can't find anything else about it. So it could have just been a sensationalized story from a politician trying to make the Biden administration look bad for gasoline prices. Or it could be a real thing. I just didn't know. Oh, let's see here. Come on, show me. Let's see if I can bring up. There's some more comments. Alrighty, good morning. How much do you think inflation will increase this fall when there's a food shortage? Something is going to happen in the economy because farmers have to plant less crops. Ronald, that's a great question. I don't know. And that's one of the reasons I'm asking about harvesting the crops. Forget planting it. If you're not going to harvest it, that's even worse, right? What about the processor chip bill from $52 billion to $265 billion? Crazy. Yeah, it is absolutely insane. The amount of pork that's getting pumped into that bill to get it to go through. And I don't know. I'm torn, guys. I understand that chip factories are expensive to build, and that we have competitors that are nation states that are going to throw whatever resources they have to throw behind it to build whatever they have to build to get the national security of having their own chip factories. So I do see how it's a national security item. I can see that. But on the other hand, there's this part of me that says we shouldn't have to become China to beat China. You know, there are certain strengths to both of the forms of government and certain weaknesses. One of our strengths, for example, is innovation. We're constantly finding new ways to do things, new ways to make things out of necessity. The other one of our weaknesses is we're slow to do things because we are deliberative and we argue among ourselves and everyone has an opinion and everyone's opinion is equal and blah, 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 blah. In China, there is no opinion. There is the opinion. And the opinion is acted upon with maximum efficiency of force, under penalty of all kinds of nastiness. So yeah, they can get a lot done, and they can get a lot done quickly, but once they're done, it's done. And they're like, what's next, coach? And that's why China is such a, people in China aren't stupid. People in China are capable of innovating and creating new ideas and new products and things. It's not like that's an innately American trait. It's just in America, if you want to get ahead, you have to think of the next big thing. And you have to invent the next big thing, or invent a way to make something that someone else is doing more efficient. If you can't do that, you don't get ahead. It doesn't mean you don't survive, that you can't, go get a job and be content with life. But in China, if you want to get ahead, you have to grab somebody else's idea and mass produce it. That's how you get ahead in China. You don't come up with new ideas. You make producing somebody else's idea cheaper. That's why China steals so much intellectual property. Not because they're incapable of making their own intellectual property. It's that they're companies that end up producing these products that they've stolen. Let me give you an example. Windmills. Do you know that the modern windmill, the energy windmill, is a completely American technology? Completely American, invented in America. Like the VCR, completely invented in America, but no longer made in America, just like the VCR. So what ends up happening is a company in America calls a company in China to produce the windmill parts, and they get a $10 million deal, okay? The first $1 million of the deal goes through. All the information is transacted that's necessary for Chinese factories to make the windmill parts. Well, the reason the American company is confident that it's not a problem is because you can make the windmill parts all day long, but unless you have the source code, you got no problems. You can't make the windmill work the way it's supposed to work without the software. So let China make our hardware. We'll save a bunch of money. It'll be great. So China's making the hardware, and now they know how to make the hardware. But China doesn't have the software. So what do? There's only 7 people in America, and this is an actual story. This actually happened. 7 people in America had access to this source code. So Chinese foreign intelligence looks at all 7 of these people and traps one of them in a honey trap. If you're unfamiliar with a honey trap, it's basically when a young woman pays you more attention than is probably something that should be happening, and compromises you, and basically you don't want it to get out that you were spending a lot of time with this young woman, so you do whatever they tell you to do to prevent the release of the information. It's called a honey trap. And as a result, China got the source code for the windmill. China then canceled the deal with the company. The Chinese company stopped production for this other American company, and now the Chinese company makes the windmills and sells them to the customers of the American company for 40% less than what the American company can produce and sell them for. That's how China takes over industries. They don't innovate for themselves. They use the apparatus of the state to get what their local domestic companies need from foreign adversaries. Okay? So do we really want America to be that? It sounds like a recipe for the dark ages where everything just kind of stops and we just live the way we live now forever. Hopefully we could have some additional technology come along and maybe some cleaner energy, that maybe some fusion, be great. Cold fusion, maybe, I don't know, some other for anti-gravity, can we have these cool things in the future maybe? Well, not if we're not innovating and not creating things. So the world is just upside down and backwards right now and super duper scary. Meanwhile, I don't know, we seem rudderless, right? We're so preoccupied with all the things that don't matter on a macro scale. Okay. So you can be pro-abortion or you can be against abortion, but on a national security macro scale, it doesn't matter. You can be for transgender rights or against transgender rights. And on a macro national security scale, it doesn't matter. You can be worried about monkeypox or not worried about monkeypox. But on a national security macro level, it doesn't matter. Now, for individual people who get these things, yeah, it matters. But on a macro scale, it doesn't matter. It's not a pandemic. It's not even an epidemic. So, it's one of those things where everybody's talking about all this stuff that doesn't matter, and you're sitting here asking questions like Ron is, like, what's going to happen when we don't have any food, or when we don't have enough food, or and here's the thing, Ron. I'm not super concerned. I'm not super concerned about people starving in America, because we have such a depth of food. I think that what we would more likely see is a lack of choice. So it'd be like, pasta again, that kind of thing, as opposed to like, well, there is no food, or you might have to eat beans instead with no rice, or there's going to be weird shortages of things. I think that's going to be the prevailing mode of operation for the next year. Weird shortages of stupid things that shouldn't be in storage, like Ryzen processors, for heaven's sake. What in the world is going on? I mean, literally, it's like, did they stop making them? It feels like they've stopped making them, because they're getting harder and harder and harder and more expensive to get every day. Let's see. Apparently I have to refresh it manually. The price of commodities today, diesel is not prohibitive for at the price of commodities today, diesel is not prohibitive for harvesting. Well, that's good news, because I'm sitting here reading this story. I'm like, this doesn't make sense, because even if diesel was prohibitive, you would think that the price of the goods that you were harvesting with the diesel would go up, because farmers would say, I can't sell it for less than I paid for it. Or maybe farmers would have to sell it for less than they paid for it. Like I said, inch deep, mile wide on agribusiness. Ironic from a guy in Nebraska, right? Yeah, I heard that, Bob, about calls for sending military advisors to the Ukraine, like they're not already there. I mean, come on. Let's get real. We've had military advisors in there since day one. You better believe it. The Ukrainian military suddenly developed the ability to ambush Russian troops in such a... Come on. I mean, I want to believe in the Ukrainian miracle, but... And then the Russians figured out, we're not fighting stupid Ukrainians here. We were fighting like we were fighting stupid Ukrainians, and now we realize we're not fighting stupid Ukrainians. They're actually being advised by somebody pretty smart. Gee, I wonder who. Maybe we should tighten up a little bit and go back to, Russia 101, where we just level the city to the ground and then walk over the rubble and take the land. We'll build buildings later. Well, let's just level everything, kill everything that's alive, take the land, and Russia wins. And that's what they're doing. Literally just leveling everything. It's amazing to me how many shells they have. Like, how many artillery... Their munitions, it's like there's not a never-ending supply of exploding rocket shells. Like, you'd think they'd run out. I mean, imagine you're trying to level a city with artillery fire. It's not precise. It's not exact. You can't blow up an entire building with one hit. You know how many shells it takes? And then you're leveling multiple cities. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me. Okay, the crazy thing is the Ukrainian war never had to happen. If Biden had put troops in Ukraine on the border with Russia, was building up their troops, Russia would have never invaded Ukraine. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Russia believed that the U.S. would do anything. I think that Russia believed that Europe wouldn't do anything because Europe's not going to endanger their energy supply. I think it was kind of a surprise to Russia that everybody did something. Oh, yeah. And if there wasn't enough great news for you, you've heard of the acronym BRICS, right? The Brazil, Russia, India, China. Who's the S? I can't think of who the S is. Anyway, Saudi Arabia? I don't know. All these countries are coming together and they're deciding to create a new reserve currency between them that is going to be a basket of their currencies put together and averaged out basically to create a reserve currency that they can trade between themselves with, isolating themselves from the dollar. If they're successful in doing that, 30% of the world's population will no longer use the dollar. Again, what ends up happening when foreign demand for the dollar goes down, the dollars go where they're wanted, and they're wanted at home. So when the dollars come home, that causes inflation. More dollars chasing fewer goods. Recessionary economy, more dollars coming home, not a great sign. So it's going to be interesting to watch what happens in that regard. The economy will not improve until Biden reverses his position on fossil fuel, and that won't happen. I agree that, energy production, when you run really fast and you jump in the air, there's a moment in the pinnacle of your jump where you could argue that gravity does not exist. You're flying, right? And then physics reasserts itself and you fall like Thor. So what ends up happening, what people don't realize, is that the entire economy, everything around us is energy. It's all energy. It's all about energy. Without energy, none of it happens. None of it happens. Without energy, you don't have your Netflix. Without energy, you don't have this radio show. Without energy, you don't have a computer. Without energy, you can't charge your car. Without energy, you can't get gas from the gas pump to run your car. So energy is all around us, and energy is the gravity of our system. And the natural physics of the system means if we don't have energy, stuff doesn't get done. And there is no, it's math. And not the new kind of math, but like the old school, like 1 + 1 = 2 kind of math, or maybe 1 - 1 = 0 kind of math. It's physics. And when you take the energy away, or you reduce the amount of energy, or you make the energy more costly, it's going to have repercussions on the rest of the system. And those repercussions are what we're seeing right now. So now the challenge is, let's say Biden is not reelected, and an energy-friendly president comes into office, whoever that might be. Banks are still not going to lend to oil refiners and to drilling companies. And even if banks started lending to these companies on day one, even if that happens, even if we open up all the federal lands, even if the Keystone Pipeline is restarted and completed in a year, if everything happens, it's going to take a decade to get back to where we were before. Doesn't mean things won't get better, but it's going to take a decade. Because these projects don't just happen overnight. There's constantly new projects, new exploration, new drilling. Sometimes it works, sometimes it fails. Then there's evaluations for yet more drilling and yet more exploration. And the whole process right now is just stopped. And you can't just start it up overnight again. It takes time. And that's something that I think that whoever gets elected, they got to be careful what they promise, because you're not going to be able to turn it around in 4 years. You're just not going to be able to. Let's see here. Tesla will be able to push a message to all the Teslas in Texas asking them not to charge their cars during the day. Bad news. Texas doesn't have the energy to provide the power they need. Yeah, they're saying Texas, Tesla's encouraging people to not charge during the heat of the middle of the day, to make that power available for the grid for air conditioners and stuff. So charge your Teslas at night, basically. It's something else, let me tell you. So a lot of the things, okay, battery powered cars are not new. back when Tesla and Edison were going at it, Edison had a battery-powered car running, or excuse me, yeah, it was a battery-powered car because Edison believed direct current was the way to go. That alternating current, which was what Tesla was proposing, was dangerous. It was used to power the electric chair, and you couldn't safely transmit this energy around. But your DC-powered devices were completely safe. Look at this, it'll even run a car, battery-powered car. Look at that go. So battery-driven cars are nothing new. The challenge that we have now is, number one, the batteries do not perform well in adverse weather conditions. When it gets hot, they don't take the charge they're supposed to take, and they don't put out the energy they're supposed to put out. When it's cold, same thing. The other problem that you have is the batteries wear out. And so there was a story I read online about a couple that bought a Ford EV. I think it was a Ford. It was a used Ford EV. Maybe it was a Chevy. I don't remember. It was a used EV. And they bought it, and 3 months after using it, they got an alert on the dashboard that there was something wrong with the charging or battery system. Took it into the dealership. Battery was shot. They paid $14,000 for the car. The battery was going to cost $11,000. So if they wanted to replace the battery in the car, they were going to pay as much as they paid for the car. Problem two, the battery doesn't exist. You see, the manufacturer doesn't make batteries for 6-year-old or 7-year-old EVs anymore. They just don't make them. And there is no aftermarket battery manufacturer for EVs. So you just can't get a battery. So now that whole battery and the whole EV is going to go into, some of it will be recycled, I'm sure. Some of it will go in the landfill. It's waste. It's complete waste. It actually hurts the environment more producing and getting rid of electric vehicles than it does running a fossil fuel vehicle. In fact, one of the most hilarious things, I didn't realize this, but there's a serious problem with windmills falling over. It happens, I guess. Never seen it happen, but from what I've read, it's not uncommon in the industry to have one of your windmills blow over. Do you know that there's between 52 and 250 gallons of oil in a windmill? I guess you got to lube those blades up. But when they fall over, all the oil spills out. 250 gallons of oil. Each windmill requires between 51 and 250 gallons of oil to operate. And you're telling me that these are not fossil fuel based? So I don't know. It's one of those things where you have to believe that physics at some point will re-exert itself, and people will be brought back into line with their stupid decisions, and they will correct their stupid decisions, and they will make different decisions the next time. That's the hope. Maybe we get there, maybe we don't. But should we look for alternative fuel sources that are not burning things to generate thermal heat? Yeah, I 100% agree. If we can find another way to power things, that would be fabulous. If we can somehow develop some kind of control of gravity, think about how many engine types just new types of engines that could develop. If you could create gravity or negate gravity. Now, I don't know how much energy it would take to do that. Maybe it would be counterproductive. But, just, again, the innovation, the next step along the way of how you can do these things. So to think that we're never going to invent a new type of energy, excuse me, killing me, is silly. Right now, no matter whether you're using nuclear or natural gas or coal or whatever, unless you're using like solar or wind, you're making energy by heating water into steam to turn a turbine. That's what you're doing. So anything you can do to turn the turbine the turbine would create energy. Solar creates energy through absorption of solar radiation, of course, from heat. And wind is powered by wind, of course. And there's oceans, the tidal generators, that's a thing. So, there's lots of, anytime we can think of a way to create new power, we should explore it. We definitely should. But the problem that you're running up against A Car and Driver evaluated the new Mazda Everyman EV. It's got a 100-mile range on it. It's designed for in-city commute only. It only got 70 miles during the test. It took 8-point-something seconds to go from 0 to 60. So merging onto the interstate is pretty much a nothing burger. It took 3.5 seconds to go from 50 to 70. So there's no acceleration. There's literally nothing exciting or interesting or even productive about this vehicle. Doesn't get the range it's advertised to get. Excuse me. Yeah, it's only $30,000, but it doesn't work. So go buy an EV. And I mean, when you think about it, like, I remember when I grew up in the 70s, my parents always had the now they would call them hoopties, like the great big tank of a vehicle, right? The large, heavy sedan, because those were the used cars then that they could afford to buy. My parents never bought new cars. They always bought used cars. So most people didn't buy new cars back then, you know. So they're driving these hoopties around, right, in the middle of a gas crisis, which is kind of ironic, and all the new vehicles being produced are these tiny little cars. Remember this in the early 80s? All the tiny little rusty Nissans driving around and little Toyotas driving around and everything else. Tiny little economy cars. And then that was thrown out for SUVs in the 90s. And now here we are today, where we're not going back to economy cars, we're going to EVs. That's the new thing now. You know, that's how you're going to get away from the gas prices being so high. But it's all cyclical. So eventually gas prices will come down again. And when they do, the price of EVs will be unsustainable again. More unsustainable than they are now. So I don't know, it's cyclical. I don't get too bent out of shape about it. I have an F-150. The F-150 has an electric motor in it as well as gas. So I don't have to plug it in and charge it or anything. It just charges off the natural braking and, you know, movement of the vehicle or whatever. But it allows me to get 20 miles a gallon in an F-150. I'm calling that a win. You know, that's pretty spectacular that I can get 20 miles to the gallon in an F-150. Maybe more if I drive it easier. I don't know. It actually gets better mileage in the city than it does on the highway, ironically, because it can use the electric on the city, you know, when you get out of first gear. Oh gosh, I apologize. I'm pretty tired. So, all right, last call for comments here. I'm going to check it one more time. Yeah, I saw that Cadillac EV, Ronald, that was like $300,000. I've told my friends who have EVs when it comes time to replace the batteries, they're going to get hosed. They are. They're going to get completely hosed. So the trick is to sell your EV before the battery life is completely shot. One of the founders of Tesla started a battery reclamation plant in New Mexico or Arizona. He saw the future of the waste and left Tesla to start the process. I'm surprised Tesla hasn't started doing it yet, you know, to recycle the materials from the batteries rather than mining them from Africa. It seemed to be a way to create a new revenue stream and further green your image, if you will. All right, guys, I got to wrap it up. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being here for the After Schrock as well. Make sure if you have the moment to do that, if you could scroll down, click on that post to vote for us in the Best of Omaha. I really appreciate your vote. Even if you're not in Omaha, you can vote for us in the Best of Omaha. It also enters you to win a free Schrock Innovations Resolute laptop. So you can actually win a laptop, but just by voting for us in Best of Omaha. So that's kind of cool. So we're going to do that. Also, we just received notice. I can't talk about it officially yet, but we received notice that we will be included in the Best of Lincoln survey. We were one of the top people that were nominated. And so we may be running another laptop deal after this one because, of course, their survey starts right when Best of Omaha stops. So we might run another deal specifically for Lincoln customers, but so you can get 2 bites at the apple. Just make sure you go vote now in the Best of Omaha. Also, if you have a Schrock modular computer, especially a holiday special, and it's not running Windows 11, maybe it can't run Windows 11, now is definitely the time to check into that upgrade, because right now, as long as we can still get the chips, you're going to save $125 off just by doing it now rather than doing it later. So it's a pretty sweet deal. Labor doesn't go on sale that often, so take advantage of it while you can. We'll see you all again next week. Thanks for joining us, and have a great week, guys.